Welcome back to the School Transportation Nation podcast. This episode is brought to you by our good friends TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing, and by School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. A little bit later, we're going to be talking with Jon Petz. I'm going to be talking with Jon Petz. He is our upcoming STN EXPO West keynote on July 14th, as well as our TD Summit trainer. He's a former sales executive and current professional magician. So he is actually the world's one and only Amazement Artist. So we're going to unpack that with him and give a little bit of a sneak peek for all you STN EXPO attendees this summer. So our early bird special is still at play. Save 20% off. It's a limited time deal, folks, through June 6th. You head over to stnexpo.com /West. Again, you can register now and get that deal. And also, too, we have our Earth Day special. Get an additional $100 off, so you can stack those. And that runs just coming up in a couple of days. So again, take care of that really quickly, folks, and look forward to seeing you in Reno. We got lots of news for you this week. But before we get to those headlines, here's a quick message.
Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN EXPO in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards, voted on by STN EXPO attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO, Antonio Civitella, said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN EXPO attendees. Civitella said, "We know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents." Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com.
All right. Well, I'm joined here this week. Tony is on vacation. It's a little spring break action for his fam. But here with the next best thing, or the best thing, Taylor Ekbatani, our senior editor. Taylor, great to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's great to be here. And I think it's been a while since it's been you and I on the podcast. So
yeah, I know you were there with Tony running the ship at STN EXPO in Charlotte. I wasn't able to attend, and it's good to get back on talking with you on the podcast. There was a lot of news that happened last week that we need to catch up on. Some tragic stuff to really lead our coverage. South Carolina, there was a fatal crash. A bus, actually several buses coming back from a field trip to Charlotte, North Carolina. Speaking of Charlotte, where we were for STN EXPO, heading back to, I believe it was Columbia, and evidently a tire blew on one of the buses. The bus flipped over onto a guardrail, and a student, a 13-year-old boy, was killed. Taylor, can you provide more information on what happened?
I believe there's not much information known at this writing. I don't know exactly how the 8th grader died. That's still kind of coming out. The investigation is ongoing. But yeah, like you said, buses were traveling back. One tire blew on one of the buses and it kind of caused the accident. That's what we're hearing right now. There were 35 students on board the bus that crashed. 21 were injured. So some were airlifted out, some were transported to local hospitals, but confirmed one fatality at this time. So very sad. We'll report on that as we know more, Ryan.
I got some photos from the scene from Mike Bullman. Of course, he is the state director of transportation for the South Carolina Department of Education. He was out there on scene and got me some photos just of the crash site, kind of in the moment last week on Thursday when it happened. Obviously, our sympathies and our hearts go out to all those affected. The school district Lexington 2 is the school district that was impacted. They sent out a statement and hadn't at that point confirmed the fatality. Again, a 13-year-old boy. So a very sad Easter weekend and going forward for a lot of families in the South Carolina area. And it doesn't come as a surprise that I received an email last Friday from a reporter for one of the local news stations, and wanted to talk about seatbelts. Obviously, that debate came up again, as it often does, and anytime that there's a serious crash, especially if there's a fatality. And again, we don't know details yet. Hopefully, we will by the time this airs. And I know Taylor, you're working on an article for the website. We don't know if it was an ejection or not, but oftentimes when we hear of a bus rollover, that's what happens. I was talking to this reporter and mentioning that's, similarly what happened in Ohio a couple years ago that led to that Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group that was looking at seatbelts, but really, they shied away from the seatbelt aspect of it and looked at a lot of the other driver qualifications, driver training, vehicle safety elements. But she asked me basically, what does it take to actually, push this through and get seatbelts on school buses all across the country? And, I did the best I could to, in a 5-minute conversation with her, provide her some nuance on that great debate that we know has been impacting this industry for decades. And, we know that Bluebird, this was a Bluebird bus actually that was involved in this crash, and mentioned to her that last year Bluebird was the first OEM to announce that they were going to make seat belts, the 3-point lap shoulder seat belts, I should say, standard equipment. But, customers can still opt out of that. So there's a lot of opinions out there, a lot of them that have been debunked. And of course, we're always looking to do more around those topics in the magazine and at the conferences as well. But, Taylor, I know you have some information. We track fatalities and a lot of the crashes that happen nationwide. This was the first onboard fatality of the school year. Is that right?
Yes, first onboard fatality. There was 14 fatalities that we've logged for this school year, 7 of which were actually the school bus killing the child. 2 were some sort of shooting incident.
Bus stop, yeah.
Yeah, 4 were due to the motorist passing and hitting the child, and then 1 onboard fatality. So very sad.
So, and we know that some of these fatalities might fall outside of the purview of, say, the National School Bus Loading and Unloading Survey, which the Kansas State Department of Education does every year. That those results will come out this fall, likely at the NASDAP's annual conference out in the DC area, because there's certain criteria that they have to follow, but we try to track everything. We're digesting articles each and every day from across the nation, from across the world, really, but looking at anything that's impacting student transportation. And we're trying to track any and all fatalities that come across the wire, again, whether that be on the school bus at the danger zone, or like you mentioned, there was a couple of students who were shot and killed. And we've seen a lot of those incidences, and just school buses being caught in crossfire. I don't know. There's been at least a half dozen articles, I think, that we've read over this past school year alone on those kinds of situations. So we're just trying to do our best to keep our pulse on what's going on. But, either way, very sad what happened out there in South Carolina. And again, our hearts go out to the families and to all the loved ones, the educators, everything, those kind of things. They hit home and hit home hard.
Yeah, what stood out to me about that, Ryan, was the tire blowing. And I don't know if that's an inspection kind of question. I'm not super familiar with cars and why that would occur, but I don't know if there's something you can provide on that, why that tire would blow. Was there too much air, or is it kind of just a freak accident where it could blow at any time?
Did they hit a pothole? Did they, and that's something I brought up to Mike Bullman when we were texting last week. that and he's one of the ones that spearheads our national school bus inspection program. That was one of the first things I asked him, and I think that certainly that's going to be looked at. I know the South Carolina Highway Patrol is leading that investigation. I have not seen yet if NTSB is going to be involved. I didn't have a chance to check out their website. I didn't see anything about that. I know that NTSB only goes to certain crashes where, whether it be a school bus or another vehicle, that is something they haven't studied before. So certainly they might be assisting, but I'm sure that that's going to be part of the investigation, is what caused that tire to blow. Was it underinflated? Was it overinflated? Was it something that should have been found in the pre-trip inspection? Or we know this was a field trip bus, so it went out of state. It was gone presumably all day. I don't know. I believe I looked at the school district calendar, and I think it was just a day trip. So it's only about an hour and a half or so ride one way. So we'll learn more. But certainly South Carolina, they lead the nation in terms of their inspection process. I mean, this has been ingrained in them. It's codified that they go above and beyond the federal DOT inspection, and certainly far beyond any other state. Now, Georgia has a full accreditation program that they have implemented that's derived from the South Carolina regulations for school bus pre-trip inspections. So, if it happened in South Carolina, then certainly it can happen anywhere else, and we'll definitely get more information on that and pass that along to you, our dear readers and dear audience, as soon as we can. All right, in other news, Taylor, I know that the National Congress on School Transportation is coming up quick. We're both going to be there. So like a week away. And some proposals came out for all the delegates last week. We started to kind of pour through them. I mean, it's voluminous. There's a lot of information, a lot of conversations that are going to be taking place that first weekend into the first week of May. But what were some of the things that jumped out at you when you were reviewing that, Taylor?
Yeah, so obviously I was working on my Danger Zone article for May when the proposals came out. And so two things kind of related to that. Crossing gates, crossing arms shall be installed on school buses. And I think that was a big one because you mentioned that to me and I went and looked at it. So that's included in my article now. But we've been hearing a lot about crossing arms. I've been hearing a lot about crossing arms since joining the industry. I know Jeff Castle of the School Bus Safety Company really pushes crossing arms on all school buses. So I think having this technology is huge on the school bus. It did say there would be, I think it was $500 to $600 fee to put them on, and 26 states already mandate the use of them. So very interesting that this was included in the procedures.
Yes, and the other half of the states, they allow them. So I think it's closing that loophole. And yeah, I know Jeff with his article earlier this year in School Transportation News Magazine. He's a big advocate, as you mentioned, and he mentioned, it's like something. You're right. It's like $700 or about that to equip these. His point was that that's a great use of money and that these things work, and that he wished he had implemented them fully when he was the director of safety for one of the leading school bus contractors years ago. So absolutely, it'll be interesting to hear the conversation on that. It seems like to be a no-brainer, but we'll definitely see. Some of the other things that jumped out to me, and that was from the specifications, the school bus specifications writing committee. Also, looking to create a standard for dual stop arms on school buses over 30 feet in length. So again, when we're looking at the danger zone, getting those stop arms to be more visible. I think that there's another point in there about LED lights. And I think that for the most part, everything mostly is LED now. But really, when you're looking at the National Specifications Manual that's going to be coming out after these deliberations are concluded next month, anything that you can put in there to just cover your bases, because so many states, they use this manual, these specifications, as state law. They adopt them part and parcel into state law, or they adopt them into the regulations. So verbiage is very important in having those standards. Another standard that we're looking at that we've talked a lot about, Taylor, is alternative vehicles.
Yeah, I saw that they had the proposal drafted up for that, and it was actually broken down into 4 different categories. So looking at driver credentials, driver training, vehicle design equipment, and special education policy for alternative transportation. So they kind of used those 4 different modules essentially and broke down information in that. So that would be very interesting conversation when that's deliberated.
Absolutely. Again, a lot of retroflective material required for
Mm-hmm.
perimeter markings, the school bus signs, which we're seeing. IC Bus recently announced that deal with First Light Safety Products to make that standard, all those illuminated signs and markings on the school bus. And as I'm sure it's not a surprise, a lot in there about EV, electric school buses, so charging port specifications and DC converter specifications and identification labels, warning alarms. I know we've talked a lot about that in the early days of electric school buses, but again, trying to create some standards for folks to refer to.
I saw a lot on sound and how to implement sound with electric vehicles. There's I want to say 2 to 3 pages just on that. So that'll be an interesting read for sure.
Absolutely. A lot of stuff on there about from an emerging technology standpoint with the RFP process. We talked a lot about RFPs last year in the magazine and at STN EXPO West out in Reno. And another big thing that's jumped out to me that I've known about for a little bit is the infants and toddlers section and the students with disabilities section, those being separated out. So there's going to be a lot of great conversation coming to Des Moines, Iowa, beginning of May. But before that, Taylor, you, Tony, and I are going to be at the ACT Expo down in Anaheim, California, the Advanced Clean Transportation Expo. One of, if not the largest commercial vehicle green, essentially shows, conferences, and exhibits that there is probably in the world. But a lot going on with that in terms of funding. We talk a lot about that in the upcoming May issue, Taylor. Clean School Bus program. Right about now is when we're supposed to hear about the rebate that closed, the 2024 rebate that those applications closed back in January. Haven't seen anything yet. So I know we got the State of Sustainable Fuels report from TRC companies, the producers of ACT Expo. So certainly there's a lot of hand-wringing, I think, just across the commercial vehicle industry about funding and those incentives that we saw so heartily for the last several years. And for this industry, obviously, we've been talking so much about the Clean School Bus program from EPA, which again, the first 2 rounds or so, the funding was released. Round 3 last we've heard that the portal was open, but the funding was frozen still. And then again, we don't know anything going forward. But some interesting tidbits that I pull out of that State of Sustainable Fuels report. You can read more about that coming up here in a couple weeks. But
before we go, I do just want to plug our June trends that we sent out. We're looking at fuel efficiencies and what fuel people are using. And something that was interesting was, we asked, would you still purchase electric school buses if the Clean School Bus program is no longer available? And so far, it's overwhelmingly no. I'm curious. Obviously, the federal funds are a huge proponent to adopting electric school buses. There was one respondent that said yes so far, so I'll be following up with them. But yeah, if you got that survey in your email, please respond. It helps us with our reporting and kind of report on the trends.
Good deal. Well, before we get to our guest interview, really looking forward to the conversation with Jon Petz, STN EXPO West keynote and Transportation Director Summit Trainer. Here's a quick message.
Hey, Safety is a number one priority for everyone in school transportation, and even more so when needing to communicate in a school bus setting. School radios, push to talk over cellular or POC radios, are the safety enhancement you need to provide clear communication across all aspects of your fleet. Schools, SROs, that's school resource officers, and beyond. School radio helps take safety and connectivity a step further by offering interoperability solutions that bridge conventional two-way radios with POC systems, creating a unified network that boosts effectiveness and safety. This integrated strategy guarantees smooth communication in both emergency situations and daily activities. To learn more about how school radio can improve safety in your communication methods, visit school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com.
All right, School Transportation Nation, very honored to now welcome to the stage Jon Petz. He will be providing our STN EXPO West keynote July 14th at the Peppermill Resort in Reno, Nevada. The big stage for the big show guy. Jon is a Hall of Fame speaker, over 1,500 organizations. You know, Jon, I'm sure your webmasters are just chomping at the bit to add school transportation news to the list of, listen to this, folks. Dell, Deloitte, National Insurance, P&G, the U.S. Air Force, and school transportation news just fits right in there.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited. This is going to be a great time spent with you. So thanks for the opportunity, and shout out to everyone coming in July. Can't wait to meet them.
Absolutely. Hundreds and hundreds. And we're already well over 200, almost 250 attendees already. And we're still just under 3 months away. So
that's fantastic.
Folks are checking out our website and seeing Jon Petz, and they're like, wow, we got to be there. So that's why we wanted to give folks a taste of it today. So first of all, as you're talking on our podcast, folks are listening out there, have to say the young Regis Philbin. I'm hearing your voice, and you said, what? You never heard that before? I'll leave that out to the nation to weigh in on that.
I indeed want feedback. I want to see what else comes back on that.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, you are a magician. You really got your start, at least professionally, as an executive. You did marketing, insurance, but you transitioned. You've written, I think it's 4 books, whether intentional or not. They're business books. I think one of them, your most recent, I believe, which is the title of your keynote, Significance of Simple Moments.
Right.
As I mentioned, that's the topic of your keynote. So this is, you market yourself as the world's only amazement artist.
Yeah.
So what is an amazement artist?
Oh, I mean, everyone has to ask the question. And it was something that someone had mentioned, and it just kind of stuck with some media, and I like it. So on the world's only, I think what it is the realization that whether I was on a big stage and, the Sydney Opera House performing, or the fact that you're in a boardroom doing a stock option pitch to venture capitalists, people always appreciate and remember moments. It's not about the data. Sometimes it's not about all the facts. It's the stories. It's the connection. And as a magician creates moments of amazement to surprise and delight and create these unexpected moments for an audience, we too can do that in what we do as professionals in our careers. People talk about what we do for them, how we make them feel, which is no magical secret. But to someone to take the fundamental rules of magic and amazement and then twist them and turn them in a way that we can be beneficial to someone who is in transportation, to someone who is in marketing and sales, and to HR, whatever. What are these fundamental elements of creating moments that people remember, and how important that can be for human connection? So taking that one side, taking it to the other, and creating and crafting something that is meaningful to the average human, in a sense, that's what I do as an amazement artist. Help them realize the visceral power of amazement and how they can use it in their own life and in their career.
And in terms of the significance of simple moments, I know you talk a lot about the gift inside us all. We all have our own, our gifts, our talents and whatnot, and really harnessing that and letting that shine. It's kind of what I've reading between the lines and what you've talked about, some of the videos I've seen and some of the things that I've read from you, and really allowing that to shine forward. And, then that is what influences people.
Very much. But I think, nobody talks about average. And I think the overall thesis of significance in simple moments is, as we start off or even develop further into our careers, many people feel we want to conquer a relationship. And then we all, of course, all soon learn that those relationships are nothing that we conquer. It's a series of simple moments that matter to those that we serve. And that's how we build trust. That's how we build loyalty. Now, how do you identify the moments? How do you deliver them? And how do you truly appreciate or recognize them in your team or in your culture? That truly is a moment of amazement. But that's the thesis of it. And no, we really get to dig into that, but do so in a highly engaging, interactive, even fun way.
Absolutely. And you're talking about those moments of amazement. So hearkening back to when you first got involved or interested in magic, you were a boy, and something your dad did.
Was.
Talk about that, what that experience was, because certainly, obviously, it was life-changing, life-altering. It provided you your path.
Well, it's one of the first moments I remember. I think the first moment of surprise. And I got to tell so listeners, you've got Ryan here who does some serious homework, having done so many wonderful interviews. Ryan's asked me about this. Like, how do you know this? No, the penny trick. I was 7 years old, and my brother and sister, they got me in my room, and I'd heard of this penny trick, but I'd never seen it. We go running down to the kitchen, and my dad does this trick. And still 40 years later, I remember that kind of moment of awe of like, how did you do it? Oh my gosh, do it again. That moment that you just have that suspense of belief. And it was an awesome moment. But that was the first, we'll call magic trick that I ever saw in my life. And, I think not everyone, but then you get the magic kit. You play around as a hobby a little bit. And then eventually it goes in the back of the closet. You never see it again. Well, I just never put mine in the back of the closet. I kept working on different things and creating other stories. And as a very shy kid, it was really something that was hugely beneficial in my life that I never realized about, that opportunity to use it to connect with someone, to get a reaction, to be able to talk and interact in different scenarios. So it became a big part of my life.
And so you grew up, you went to college, you got your first jobs, and you
in the program. Yeah,
you were in marketing basically, and you worked for you were an executive for a marketing company. And then I think you went to work for an insurance company, and you were a vice president of sales, so C-suite type person. And I was reading here that you kind of fell into the career that you're in now of being a keynote presenter, professional magician, author.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about how that transpired.
No, you hit a lot of different aspects. No, I did. I was a tech sales and marketing guy and started. Remember when you dial 1 for long distance? Yeah. I was working for MCI in the early days and selling T1s to the internet when the internet was new. Then I quit and I toured professionally as a magician around the world. Jumped in really to the tech side on a high level, which is kind of the venture capital side, and tech entrepreneur. I was 15 into organization. We built a 1,500 some people, 330 million invested in it back in the late 90s, which was a pretty good chunk of change then, as it is now.
Yes.
And when the dot-com all blew up, I found myself on the tech side of insurance. And what was fascinating, I had about 250 sales reps. So I would do training and inspiration, and I would share with them, because as a salesperson, I would use these little magic moments as, things to leave behind. And I'd be the one that you go into like an office and be like, oh my gosh, like they want to see the salesperson. Oh, it's Jon, what do you got for us? Come do. And I just use it as a great tool. But then I use those moments with my sales team and would kind of train them on what they could do. So when they leave, people want to see them back. What's the do it again moment? And then I had clients that started asking me like, hey, you think you could talk to our sales team? But then you kind of mentioned that's what happened. Then I had vendors ask, and then I had people I'd never heard of, like, hey, I hear you talk to sales groups. And that's literally how I got to where I am today. And it'll be in June, actually, so it'll be just 21 years. I call it a real job, since I've had a real job. And I'm still having fun. So hitting around the world and always kind of creating something new so we can best serve the people that we get to work with.
Well, great for you, as they say. If you You never work a day in your life if you're doing something you love. So absolutely. So it's interesting. You actually founded a company that's basically I think it's the company, your production company for your speaking and your book writing. I love the name, Bore No More.
I'm glad you do. It was actually the very first name of the company, and I've just always stuck with it because that's what I want to do. Boring meetings suck. That is the absolute pinnacle of what we get stuck with sometimes. So what can we do to engage, inspire, and energize those in a meeting? It doesn't happen all the time.
So really, you touched on it a little bit, but in terms of magic and the skills that we all have, how does that really connect to business? Because I know that you've done a lot of work and study in communications. That's certainly something near and dear to my heart.
No, and perfect. So let's get into it because people are like, okay, what really are we going to get for this? Magic boy wonder, what are you going to do? No, but magic, when we look at it, and even business, let's start on the magic side. Magic is assumption, it's misdirection, it's belief. And those are the tools, kind of the psychological tools that we use, whether we realize it or not, and what we can fall for. I want people always walking out the door from business feeling more valuable than they are and helping them realize some of the potential that they have. I think sometimes we have people that think or see a CEO or an executive, or even take an Olympic athlete. Look at that gold medalist. I could never do that. But in reality, take what that thing is. No, we need a method in which to accomplish that. Magic is all about method. You see something you think is impossible. No, it's a penny trick. Listen, I know 10% more than you to pull off this trick. That's all it is. I've just studied and worked harder 10% to do it. So if we applied ourselves and looked at 10% more, how we can connect with a child getting on, how we can connect with the community, how we connect with the software operators that are running the back end transportation logistics for our buses. How can we connect 10% deeper? But what can happen as a result? And realizing those possibilities is endless sometimes. So we like to use magic as an analogy. This is not a magic show. Do we get to have a little bit of fun? Absolutely. But we want to look at some of the fundamentals and the psychology, even neurology of how we react to those moments and how that builds a greater connection with people on our team and for those that we serve.
Right. And I mentioned you've written 4 books. So, we know one of them is Significance of Simple Moments. What are the other 3?
Well, you said 4. I didn't correct you. Really, I would say there's 3.
Okay.
Because one was done twice. There was a version 1 and a version 2. But
okay.
There was a DVD series on unlocking the secrets, but that was something different. No, the first one was called Boring Meetings Suck. Yeah, that was the one.
They do. That's true.
It was right to the point, wasn't it? Just hit you between the eyes. And that had a first edition and a second edition. And that is for your cubicle, corporate, everyday meeting person. And the sublines was great. It was how to get more out of meetings, or I taught people how to get out of meetings without getting fired. And I think that's why it took off. And it became an Inc. magazine. This is 10, 12 years ago now, but the top 10 business book for one of them. Significance in Simple Moments, as you mentioned, and then Best of the Best, which was a multi-authored book. And everyone kind of wrote a couple different chapters on about what it takes to perform at their best. And I was really thankful to be a part of that.
Were there any of those vignettes, I guess I'll call them, that really stood out to you in terms of, what some of those contributions were from your friends there in the writing world?
What stood out? That was a while back. I'd have to go back and look. I think just that what stood out is the differences that we have when we look at something. And I think almost everything has been said, everything's been written, but when we can put a new wrap around it, a new way of sharing it so that it truly relates to someone, that's what makes it meaningful. And I think me reading those other chapters and saying, well, this is cool. I understand the concept, but I really like how you packaged it so it's even more relevant in this industry or in this scenario. So I think that's what sticks out.
And in terms of, I talked earlier about I think you've spoken to over 1,500 organizations. Most important, of course, coming up in July.
It is. I can't wait.
STN EXPO.
Best one yet to come.
How many countries have you visited? You've been all over the world, right?
I don't know. Maybe Not a crazy amount, honestly. 20, 25, I'd have to look.
Where you spoke at the Sydney Opera House?
Sydney Opera House. I did an event. Yeah. I'm back in Australia in October. We're heading back for Brisbane. Yeah.
Very nice. What's been the best place that you've visited when you've been on the speaking tour?
Best place to visit. Actually, I was in Malta in February. I'd never heard of Malta, let alone been there. That was fascinating. Loved it. Just the culture and the history of there's been 6 different countries that have conquered this little island nation, which is the European Union, the smallest entity in the European Union. That I loved. Outback Australia, I'd say. Barcelona, Madrid, Spain. Amalfi Coast, Italy. Some of those European places. Very, very nice.
Absolutely. Well, I think
they were all work, Ryan. I was working, of course.
Oh, but yeah, I'm sure you had a little bit of fun. Of course, and you were talking about Malta. Of course, Malta, before you were there, they were famous for the Malta Conference, ending World War II. But then you came there, so that that rewrote the history books. I also want to ask you about this because I really found this interesting. I did not know this. Tell our audience about miracles and magic because I think it's really going to resonate with our group, especially.
Oh, that's something very near and dear to my heart, and the last book that you've mentioned a couple of times, we've mentioned that's the story behind how that got started. In brief form, a chance experience in a hospital where I was asked to perform. There was a child who wanted the most famous magician in the history of the world to come meet him, which was David Copperfield, and they didn't think it was going to happen, so they called me. I'm like, what am I going to do? So this chance meeting turned into a very unique experience. And as a result of that, I wanted to find a way to help kids. And these are the kids that the child I met, his name was Nathan, and it was, life-threatened condition. And there's many organizations that serve them. And sometimes they send them on wishes, and there's national programs and local. I wanted to do something that was ongoing. So Miracles and Magic is an opportunity for kids in a life-threatened condition to forget about chemo, forget about shots and hospital beds, and come and bring all their family and experience a day of magic and illusion. And it's grown over 20 plus years. And it's the best magicians in the world. We fly them in and we put on this show for the families, and we also do a show for the public, and all that money gets donated. And in fact, the book that we've mentioned, that is not a book that makes any money. It's all done by donation, and that money gets donated to Miracles and Magic to basically fund the opportunities for us to do the shows and to pay for the theater and fly in talent. So it's been a remarkable experience to do it and see the faces and the reactions and just the joy you can bring to others.
That is awesome. Truly awesome. So we talked about the keynote on July 14th. You're actually also speaking, training really for our Transportation Director Summit 2 days earlier.
Yeah. That's up the hill.
Out there up in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah. That's not a bad spot, right?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I've seen you spoken up there before. So
I have.
Many years ago.
It has been a few. And it's funny. I'm there 2 weeks after. I go right back.
Well, we want to make sure that you get all your play in when you're up in Tahoe.
I like to try.
So really, you've talked a lot about the connection of magic and those amazement moments that we can transition to from personal lives to business lives. But are there some takeaways that you're looking, or maybe you can inspire our attendees or would-be attendees to think about as they're contemplating, either going to STN EXPO or thinking about it, when they're going to come out and talk to you? What would you want them to walk away with?
No, great question. I love it. So we're going to walk away with several different things, and I probably won't spoil them all. But as I mentioned, one thing at the beginning, when someone sees a magic element, 2 things always happen. People say, "Oh, how'd you do it?" Then it's like they get their friends, they bring them up to you, they get their camera recording and look at you and like, do it again, do it again. So help them reimagine what is a do it again moment for what they do. How do we create a moment that people are going to talk about, whether we're an introvert or an extrovert? Some people think we have to be the showman. No, not at all. We want to create a moment that connects with our people, our team, our culture, those we serve. Do it again moments. Also want to help them understand the value of what they do. Oftentimes we describe ourselves by our job position, our title, our affections of what we do with our career. But taking it even steps further and further, the experience of the hospital, realizing what happened with that child after the fact when I was there, Do people know the value of one simple action and the ripple effect it can have on those around them? And if we appreciate and attack each one of those little moment opportunities with the understanding of that value and the impact, it can have significantly different results. And that's only just going 10% more. We demonstrate earlier on what 10% more can do for an amazement and what seems like an impossibility factor. So if they could create those moments and realize the 10% ripple effect, what would it do for all of those around them and continue to exponentially do? Definitely an inward-looking inspirational moment that's going to bring a true sense of purpose and value to each and every task.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person and seeing your work in action. Tell our audience where they can find out more about you, your books, for example. Where can they find your books if they so would be interested in purchasing them before they come see you?
No, they're out there on Amazon. That's probably the easiest, quickest way. You can certainly go to the website, jonpetz.com. If you forget the name, Google Amazement Artist. Thankfully, I'm the only one that pops up. You'll see that in there. That always helps. And I will say, when the Significance book, it is 100% by donation. If you buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, they make a profit, but the profit that comes to us is all then donated. I want to be very transparent on that always. I think that's pretty important with any type of foundation. So, but it's all out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us. Really looking forward to it. And again, if you want to learn more about Jon Petz, as he said, you can head over to Jon Petz, PETZ.com, or of course, STN EXPO /West. You can learn more about Jon and what he's going to be talking about. Jon, thanks again for joining us. Just under 3 months, about 2.5 months away or so. We'll see you up in both Reno and up in Tahoe.
I can't wait. It'll be a unique experience, that I promise. Unlike anything they've ever seen before.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Again, thanks to Jon. Really interesting conversation. Really interesting guy. I'm really looking forward to meeting him in person and seeing him out in Reno, along with all of you, too. We'd love to see you. Head over to stnexpo.com /West. Again, register today. Take advantage of that early bird deal as well as our Earth Day deal. Thanks to Taylor and Jon again for joining me on this episode. We also appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder and School Radio. Thanks so much, Nation. We'll catch you next time.